We had to make a ton of sacrifices, and those were without question the most trying, I would say, 15 months of my personal career.
It went from like, dude, you're killing it, to, are you gonna make it?
I mean, I remember watching the balance sheet just go, and it was like, oh my God.
We had the three founding fathers, so to speak, of Bison Ventures in here and having a great conversation. And we spoke about the origin story and just a lot about what we've been through over the last couple of years, and the corporate culture that we've built here and what we're proud of. But we've also talked about the struggles and the trials and tribulations of these last couple of years through this business. And I think if it resonates with you, this would be a great episode to listen to fully, because there's a lot of really good information from three people that have been successful and not successful. And so take a listen. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Thanks. Since it's the first episode in the new podcast room, it's been about 6 months since we've done an episode. That the best way to start the new season, so to speak, is to have the three founding partners here together. And I think it's important for us to, because we've never really told the story together, the three of us like this, I think it's a good time for us to talk about it. And, you know, the trials and tribulations of starting this company when we did, and how Jeremy got involved. I think that's a big, important part, because, you know, he's somewhat new to the Valley, but also new to the business. So people know us from the past. But so I thought I'd start there, really just get into the very beginning of kind of how this all even came to fruition, because I think you, even though you and I had talked about it briefly, you two really are the two that kind of catapulted this to start, and I don't think a lot of people know that. And I think it's important to tell the story of how it went down, because, in my opinion, it lends to your friendship and like the realness of like life and how shit happens sometimes. And you know, Jeremy's not a very sensitive guy, but
Very sensitive. Very sensitive.
He's not very sensitive, but I think it's a really cool story. Just it lends to, I think, just our relationship, the three of us. So why don't we just start there a little bit, because it also gets into the name, I think, a little bit too, and that same trip, so to speak, is where a lot of this stuff came to fruition. So why don't you start with what you were doing when you decided to go to Park City?
Okay. It was COVID. Remember, COVID had just hit that March of 20. And everyone was in lockdown, and about a month into summer, I decided we're going on an RV trip. Never done it, and people were doing it, so I jumped on the bandwagon. I slapped together the trip in like 2 weeks and loaded up the family, and that's kind of where we got on the road and, you know, headed north. And we went from here to Flagstaff to Moab, and when we were staying in Moab, the next stop was, you know, Deer Valley, Park City. But I think before we left, that wasn't on my map, and I was talking to him, and he's like, oh, hey, we're going to be in Park City with the family for a couple weeks, which they do a lot every summer. And I was like, well, shoot, we're in an RV. I mean, it's open road. We can go wherever we want. So we put that on the coordinates, and I'm like, let's go hang out with the West.
And Jeremy was living in San Francisco.
Yep.
Or not Bay Area. Sorry.
Yep. And so anyway, so we put that on our hit list. So it was going to be Flag, Moab, Utah, and then we were going to stay in Utah for like 3 days, hang out with the West family. And, you know, we've known each other forever, so our kids have grown up together, and they all love hanging out. So we're like, that'll be a perfect stop. Get everybody out of the truck. And then we're in Moab. It's very hot. This is like July. We're only there for one night. And then we had the plan to meet up with them the next day, get there. I think it's like a 5 hour drive from Moab, something like that. And I'm heading out in the Beast. It's a Class A RV, just so everybody understands that.
That means it's big.
Yeah, it's really big. It was a 38-footer. But so anyway, so we hit the road. We're on our way, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to call Jer and check in and be like, dude, we're like 2 hours out or whatever it was. And, what do you guys want to do tonight? All that kind of stuff. And I pick up my phone, I call him, and I can instantly tell when I'm like, what's up, dude? And he's like, hey. And I'm like, you just know your friends, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, something's off.
Yep.
Could be nothing. Could be just had too many drinks last night, but something's he's not, And I'm like, what's going on, man? And he's like, did you not get my text messages last night? And I'm like, I look down at my phone. I'm like, I don't have any text messages. And then like literally within 5 minutes, they started to come through. Mm-hmm. And of course, as soon as he said that and the way he said it, I was like, something's up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I'm in the ICU with Cole, which is his oldest son and one of my 2 godsons. And how old was Cole?
11.
11. Cole was 11. And I'm like, well, what are you doing in the ICU? And he's like, well, we had a mountain biking incident. We had, came down and he's okay now. Like, but he's getting discharged. I think that night he's getting discharged tonight. We're in the hospital. He's okay. And then I'm like, all right, man, well, what do you need? We'll come straight to the hospital in you were in Salt Lake, right?
Yep.
Yeah. They were in Salt Lake at the hospital.
Why don't you tell us what happened to Cole?
So we were
hold the mic a little closer to your face.
We were mountain biking in Deer Valley, and
he's a pretty advanced
he's a good
biker
biker
for a kid.
And we had the full day. He was a really good biker at that stage, and it was just kind of this odd day, like a comedy of errors. I got a bunch of flat tires, and he would go off alone, and everything was fine. But ultimately, we wanted to push it, so we just kept riding. And then, honestly, our last run of the day, we were going down a trail called Tidal Wave. It's a jump trail, and he'd probably done it 10 times that day. And he was kicking ass, flying over these tabletops. I was having a hard time, frankly, keeping up with him at that point. And basically, it's got these like 4 sections, and so after a section, you'd stop, you'd kind of catch your breath, wait, whatever. So we get to basically the last section. I'm ahead of him. I pull over, to kind of wait, and all of a sudden, he's just flying. He's having a great time, and he goes and keeps going down the trail, which is not a big deal. And a couple of guys came down behind him that were like, pretty serious guys, and they're flying. They're like, oh, he's kicking ass, made me happy and whatnot. So I give it a couple of, probably 45 seconds to try and let him clear. I come down, there's a couple of jumps, and then you basically have this big drop to the final jump, which is next to the lifts. And I'm coming down the hill, and I see all those guys that went in front of me off their bikes, like waving, like, don't go, like, oh, and I'm like, my stomach just dropped. I'm like, holy fucking shit.
Right.
It's got to be Cole. So I, come down, and he was, basically just in a ball, like blood coming out of his head, bikes shattered, and, you just kind of lose your mind, frankly. In a situation like that. And so
he was unconscious, obviously.
Unconscious, not moving. He's like on his stomach. I see the side of his face, and there's just blood everywhere. So I throw my bike down, I run over, and I grab, I'm screaming, and he's not responding. And I grab him to try and, sort of determine. The guy grabs me, and he's like, you can't fucking touch him. Like, he's like, I'm actually a nurse. Like, dude,
oh, wow.
Like, you can't touch them, just, give it a second. And, that I lost my mind at that point, like very scary,
Like, what did you do? Like, was it emotional, just breakdown, or were you like screaming for like?
I was screaming at the top of my lungs, like, crying.
Yeah.
Just cause it's like, is he dead? Is he paralyzed? Did I do this? So just everything's going through your head. And, I get my phone, call my wife, and I'm, this is like in the moment, and I can barely talk. And so she was actually really calm, but, like if you ask her about it, like and frankly, I'm generally pretty good in moments like this, but it was just, it was a lot. So in any event, the medical team that was down at the lift, that came up on ATVs, and called, 911. They had a helicopter flying in. And And so again, it was, I don't know, probably 20 minutes, but you just don't know what's going on. And I'm just losing my mind, kind of freaking out. And they're trying to, calm me down and all that. Ultimately, an ambulance shows up before the chopper does. So they get him on that. And so I rode in the ambulance, with them down to Salt Lake to the ICU at University of Utah.
30 minutes.
Yeah. And and at that point, he's in back of the ambulance. He came to a little bit in terms of like, he would start to cry, but then he would go out. And so it was touch and go. Didn't really know what was going on. So get there, it's COVID. As he mentioned, my wife and sister met us down at the emergency room. They actually beat us there. And basically they would only admit one parent in with him. And so just based on my, state of mind, it was like, Kristen, you go with them. And so basically it was, it was a situation where, he's fine at this point, but, head trauma. He, broke a bone in his eye and had lacerations on his legs, arms, and all sorts. But we didn't know. It was touch and go. They had to do, CAT scans, whatever. So basically, he was in the ICU. Kristen stayed there that night. I came and relieved her the next morning. And finally, when I got there the next day, he started to wake up a little bit. So that was good. He was starting to respond. But obviously a shell of himself at that point, just with the head trauma and all of that, not knowing what's going on. So it was just it was an eye opener. And even at that point, you didn't know if there was going to be long-term ramifications, with his head injury and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, man, we stayed there we were in the hospital for 2 days. And in that time frame, they were coming up. And so I think I called them too, left them a voicemail like, hey, stuff's going on. Like, I don't know if you want to come or whatever. And I kind of gave it. So by the time, he actually got a hold of me, and he was oblivious to what it was, it was just kind of this odd, situation.
So did you come straight to the hospital, or what did you do?
No, I said that to him. I go, and by the way, when the text started coming through, they were
resting that on their belly.
Oh, sorry. I am putting on some weight. When my whole family goes to sleep, I sneak ice cream. But no, so when the text started to come through, I'm looking at him, and there are pictures of Cole laying in the hospital bed, all bruised up. He's got the neck brace on, and I'm like, oh my God. In some ways, I'm kind of glad I didn't see those before I talked to him, because if I couldn't get a hold of him, I'd be like, what's going on? So I'm like, do you want, we'll come straight to the hospital in Salt Lake. And he's like, no. He's like, he's getting discharged tonight. He's good. He's got a concussion. He just has to have low stimulation, so we're just going to take him back to the, the house and just put him in bed and like have the lights off. Let's let it be dark and just let him just like be chill. I was like, all right, man. I'm like, well, and the place that they were staying in was, I don't know, 5 minutes from where we were staying. And so I was like, no problem. I'm like, I'll go get my family to our rental. and then I was like, dude, I go, I'll be up waiting all night. Like, if you need me, call me. I'm here for you. I'm like, once you get discharged, if you need to come have a drink or something, like, call me. So we get to our place, and I think it was like, my whole family went to bed early. It was a long day of traveling, So I think it was like 8:30 or something. Like, the kids are passed out. Rachel's passed out. And I'm just sitting there hanging out. And then I think it was around 10:30, and he texts me, and something along the lines of, you still up for that drink? And I'm like, of course, come over. So he comes over and comes in. I can remember it pretty vividly, which is it's just strange how you remember certain things. He comes in. I pour the 2 drinks, right? A couple whiskeys, and we go sit on the couch. Didn't you have kind of long, like, hair then?
It was COVID.
I kind of remember. And I'll tell you why I say that, because I remember, this is probably the most emotional part, at least like from my vantage point. Obviously, he'd been through a ton, but we sit on the couch, and I literally look at him. I go, dude, what happened? Because remember, at this point, I don't know anything that he just told you, right? And I've known Jer since, middle school, and probably never seen him cry. There was that one time he got pretty upset with that gal in middle school, and then he punched a garage door at our friend's house. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. And but I've never seen him, break down at all. And I go, dude, what happened? And he just, immediately puts his hands on his face, starts bawling his eyes out. And the reason I remember the hair is because he was like this, and his like what he thought was cool surfer hair was like kind of hanging, dangling around. And he just lost it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I go, and then he gets out of that a little bit. And I'm like, dude, what happens? And he couldn't, and I don't even know how much you remember this, but he had a hard time getting it out. He was still like emotional. And he's like, dude, he's like, I didn't know if he was dead. He goes, nobody would tell me. And I'm sitting there like his tongue's hanging out. Is he breathing? Is he this? Is he paralyzed? Is he never going to walk again? Like his mind's just going a million miles an hour as you would as a dad or anybody you care about. And so then that was a big moment just for us as brothers, basically. And then so we got that part out of the way. He told me the whole story. And I can't remember exactly when we pivoted to like the next part of the conversation, but and I guess I'll give you one just little background, which I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this, but I remember, a couple years I think before that, because we would see each other at least 3-4 times a year, just visiting or whatever. And of course, like we all do with our friends, right? How's things going? What's going on in life? How's the job? All those things. And, Jeremy was a extremely successful guy in the corporate world for a long time. He was at his company, I think 18 years and climbed the ranks fast and, badass, obviously. And I remember a moment a few years before asking him, like, what's going on with work, whatever, like, what's your next step? Yeah. And he's like, well, if I want to take the next executive move, I have to move to LA or New York. And he's like, I'm not going to do that. Kids are little, I'm not going to uproot them. They had a great ecosystem in Marin County. They had a ton of buddies he went to CU Boulder with, all are from there, and they all went back there. So they just had an awesome support system of friends. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to, uproot my family. And then there was another conversation. So to me, that was like, okay, he's just sort of going to do this, right? Which is fine. But like, I know him so well and the potential and just everything he can bring to the table in life. And I remember me thinking like, oh man, like that's kind of sucks. Like Jeremy has so much more in the tank, Yeah. And there's probably a version of that he enjoyed for a while, right? Yeah. But we all get complacent after a while. We've all been there. And so there was that. And so I tell you that because then we're on the couch and he's, kind of gets himself put together and we're talking more about life. And it's somehow, I don't know how we started the conversation. I said, hey, I go, dude, you need to quit your job at Chase. And at this point, I'm not even thinking about like another thing with us. I'm just thinking you need to quit your job at Chase. You're just, you're not going to cruise forever. I know you think you're going to go live in the mountains like for the rest of your life and never like do anything, but it's not going to, like, no, you're not. and then that just led into somehow, because we have been talking for a long time, and even our wives when we get together about, it was always just like a dream, but never like went anywhere. Like, oh, dude, wouldn't it be great if we worked together? Because we're a yin and yang to a lot of extent, like our skill sets, and we fill each other's voids a lot. And we would talk with the wives and have drinks but we never go anywhere the next day. It was like, oh, it would be great, but whatever. I've got my deal, you've got your deal. It's not going to work. And so I just somehow, maybe it was the whiskey, I don't know, it probably was a little bit of that. And I'm like, dude, I don't know if you want to. I go, but if you want to start a mortgage company, I'll do it because that's all. I'm too dumb to do anything else. That's all I know. So and of course we probably shared about where I was at in my career at the point, and wanting to do something different. And you and I talking about change and all that. And that's basically how it ended. And I don't think we didn't make a decision. It was just I put it out there. Yeah. And then you
remember it the same way.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a pretty good summary of it all. It was just one of those. As Stuart said, it was, we've talked about doing stuff forever. And frankly, it became kind of a standing joke for our wives. Like, yeah, whatever, you guys.
Remember the Golden Retriever farm?
Yeah, and it was always just, talk and a dream. And I think, I was complacent at work in terms of good career, very stable. Yeah. But I knew that, like, again, I didn't have a lot of passion, but I also knew I could coast forever kind of doing it. So it was time to shake it up, but I'm rather risk averse. I didn't want to ever like pull the ripcord or really commit to an idea like that. And I just think emotionally at that point, I was just in a unique mindset where there's a lot more, you just have a lot more perspective. Like what matters? Every day matters. Your kids matter. Life matters. Life is short. And Stuart always was saying stuff like that, right? You know, we don't want to sit there, you know, when we're 70 with regrets that we wish we would have done it. You know, I think he would say that he'd be a lot happier, more fulfilled sitting in his rocking chair, taking the risk, even if it didn't work. And so it just started to stimulate a lot of like, it's time. And that's the thing. My wife, he mentioned our wives were supportive. My wife is the opposite. She likes to take risks. She likes to spice it up. And so she was always like, go for it, do it. So yeah, we had that conversation. And, you know, and I think that night I became pretty excited about it in a way that I probably haven't before. Like always excited, but this time I'm like, I really feel like I should do this. I really feel like I should do something different. So, you know, we didn't talk about it again on the trip. It was like that night. And then I remember, you know, talking to my wife about it probably the next day. And of course she was like, yeah, let's, you know, like you should do it. You should be serious about it, whatever. So, but I didn't want to like, you know, push too hard right out at that moment and just think about it a little bit. So I would say 2 weeks went by. We hadn't talked about it. He was RVing. And I was like, man.
2 weeks had gone by. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought it was
my memory's different. I thought it was the next day when you sent me the text message.
Oh, well, yeah, that is correct. So basically maybe it was a day or two later.
Brian's like, you're a liar.
no.
He had left, and
Yeah.
I basically sent a text message. It was like, hey, man, I've been thinking about it. I'm serious this time. Like, I really think we should, you know, talk about this. I want to do it. If you want to do it, you know, no big deal. I understand you're at a different place in your career, but like, I'm in if you're in. And he didn't respond. So just ghosted me. And like completely ghosted me. And I'm like, what the fuck? And a couple of days go by, and I think it was at least like maybe a week or so.
Why did you ghost him? Were you just so scared?
I've never ghosted anybody, so I just want to try it. I'm just kidding. Well, I will say, just to quickly back up, so I do remember in the moment when we were having the conversation when he was talking about Cole, I do remember him saying, my life flashed before my eyes, like in those moments, right?
Yeah.
And then I do remember also saying, we're not getting any younger, dude. We had just we were turning 40 that year. I'm like, it's now or never. We're either going to do it now or we're never going to do it, and let's stop talking about it.
Yeah.
And then we got back on the road the next day, as my memory at least, to head back, to head up north where we were headed to Yellowstone. And I'm driving. So I just will say this: maybe a couple years before, I had, like my wife, like all of our significant others, they know us so well. And there's probably a few times over the last 5 years I said, man, wouldn't it be cool if we started a mortgage company? Like, I feel like that might be the next thing. Like, where else do you go? And, that was COVID. We were so busy. It was like, and, my wife, who's also very supportive, as you both know, was just always like, gosh, man, you work so much now. Like, our kids are little, And so I never took that any further, the thought. And then why that's important to this part of the story is, so I'm back on the road. I'm driving the RV. Kids are doing God knows what in the back. Rachel's sitting in shotgun. And I get a ping on my phone, and I'm reading it, and it's kind of a long message, and basically it's what he said. It was like, hey, man, thanks again for everything, last night and being there for us, and great seeing you. And by the way, I don't know if he literally said, I don't know if you're serious about our conversation, but if you're in, like, I'm in, let's do it. And at that moment, I had every emotion you could imagine, like happiness, excitement, terror, right? Like, oh God.
Because it wasn't about like joining forces with him. It was like, oh shoot. Now I'm actually going to have to start a mortgage company.
Yeah.
That was he basically called you out on like it's your dream, but you were oh crap.
And I thought about you. I was like, oh my God, like what's Ryan? Oh, this is crazy. I'm going to ruin everybody's lives. And so I'm reading it and I'm super silent. And Rachel looks at me and she's like, what? And I'm like, you need to read this. And it's like the longest 15 seconds of my life. I'm like, got my steering wheel and I'm waiting for her to like say something. And I can tell she's done reading it, and I look over, and I'm like, what do you think? And Rachel, exact words, goes, fuck it, you have to do it. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And I think the reason there was also maybe an extra delay was now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, how do I respond to this? Because if I say, yeah, let's do it, it's like that's in the universe now. Like now I can't not do what I said I was going to do.
Yeah.
And I think I was just processing for a few days, like, okay. And I was like, okay. So, sorry I ghosted you.
No, it's, I mean, again, maybe.
So let me just say, like, part of the version that you guys probably don't even know, that I know, is the way I found out. Do you know how I found out? I was at your house.
No, we've talked about it.
And you had a whiteboard in your freaking in your office, and it had like all the stuff about starting a mortgage company. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on? I was like, cool, dude. Like,
sweet,
awesome. Thanks for letting me know. And you know, your comment was, before we were gonna just like throw it out there, we wanted to make sure that this is even something that's even possible to do, which I think's horseshit. That I wasn't included on that process since I built the fucking company with you. But no. And so then you guys were kind of doing some behind the scenes sort of stuff to figure out if this is going to fucking work, right?
I know. I think that my version is we sort of said, okay, let's take some time and research how we could do it, what avenues we could do it with, like how we would do it, and then figure out, like, does it even make sense with the friendship commitment that if we get to the end of several months of looking into this and we both realize this doesn't make any sense, that's okay. We high five and we go back to our normal lives. Because we didn't know, right? Yep. And it was like, and at least at that point, at least for me, I could have comfort knowing at least we looked at it. We didn't just like have a conversation and never talk about it again. And
you said, don't tell Ryan.
I didn't.
No, that is true. Basically, because to Stuart's point earlier, when we talked about it, he's like, again, you know how excited Stuart gets about dreams. He's a big dreamer. It's like Ryan has to be part of it. Like, you know, he's like, knows everybody. He's got to be. So you were always part of the conversation, but basically next steps that we finally took when he got off the road is we're like, okay, if we're going to get serious, let's set up a weekly call and let's just start talking through what it would look like, how we would get there, how do you map it out? And we didn't know shit in terms of like starting a company. And so it was like, so, you know, elementary getting going. I think we had like a Word doc. We were like trading and like writing notes, and so ultimately Stuart was able to, you know, reach out to a couple of other CEOs of other mortgage companies just to start picking their brain. How did you do it? You know, what's the process like? And that started to give us,
worth it?
Yeah. And that gave us more insight, I think, into ultimately, you know, the business, the pitfalls, the work that goes into it. And frankly, I think all of them, they all kind of had the same, you know, response. They're like, it is hard. Like it is, you know, really a cutthroat business where you've got to have a stomach, you know, to deal with these ups and downs, which frankly we now really appreciate.
We all do.
But they're also like, but it's awesome if you can do it. And you know, if you really are committed to doing it, it can be highly successful and you'll have a good time doing it. And so, you know, it was one of those where I think it gave us somewhat of confidence, still not a lot of understanding about, you know, ultimately would get there. But what really then started to transpire is we got, you know, deep into like the planning, like how do we get warehouse lines? How do we, you know, get investors set up? How do we get a tech stack? All of this kind of stuff. And it's daunting. And so we just kept going up back and forth. And one of the big parameters that Stuart always had was when we launch this thing, it can't be, you know, some, you know, rinky-dink operation. We have to have all the products. I have to be able to take care of all of my, you know, past clients. I want all of my employees who are with me to come over and have everything that they've ever had. And so in my mind, I'm like, how the hell are we going to do that? Like, you know, that would take a gigantic capital raise. It would just be something, you know, really, really substantial to do. And so I remember on one of the calls, I'm like, Stuart, we've got to see if there's a way to do this that, you know, can accelerate the process where we basically partner with another company. We get some of that stuff, you know, in terms of shared services, you know, back office operations, and we use their scale, and we kind of grow from there. And, you know, Stuart was reluctant, honestly, about that because, again, he wanted to really design a company that he could own and control and do it all. But ultimately, I think
we could control.
Well, and again, I just think we got to that point, but it became clear to me that was the path.
Yeah.
And so, when I eventually...
At what point did, I can't remember if I was already involved at this point, but you guys had talked to the owners of Bay Equity.
Yeah, I was going to bring this. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay. And he was the one that said, like, you guys remind me of me and my brother when we started this thing. And, like, yeah, it sucks, but fuck, do it.
There's two vivid. So I reached out to a couple that I know that owns a mortgage academy that's on the, in the South.
Mortgage company.
What's that?
Mortgage academy?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
Zenix?
Zenix, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, hey guys, can you guys just introduce me to a couple leaders, people who have started mortgage companies anywhere in the country, just so I can have a warm conversation and see if I even have lost my mind. So I think I talked to 6 different people they hooked me up with, which was awesome. I will tell you, there was one guy that basically was like, you're crazy. Like, yes, when we all started these 20 years ago, I'd tell you yes, but the game has changed, the barriers to entry. It's too hard, right? And you go, shoot, okay. But the Bay Equity brothers, the McGoverns, we had a call with them, and they couldn't have been nicer, more cordial, open book. And,
great guys.
Great guys. And they started a company as brothers, right? Which is what we all are. And so we had a call with them, and Jeremy already said kind of what they said, like, hey, it's hard, it's a lot of work, but if you can do it with people you love and make it work, it's awesome, right? To work with the people you love and build something for yourselves and others. And I remember Rachel and I hadn't been on date night forever. I mean, our kids are little, and we decided to go on a date night, and I think it was like a day or two after that conversation. And it's like I'm going into the date night thinking like, okay, phone's in the pocket, Rachel and I engaged, be present. And I hear my phone buzzing, and I'm like dying to look at it because it's nighttime. I'm like, I know it's him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, babe, she's like, just check it. So I pull my phone out, and I have a text from him. He's like, hell yeah, did you see that email? And I'm like, I go, babe, can I check?
Was that from Jeremy?
Yeah, from Jeremy. And I was like, no. So I pull it up, and it's an email from the McGovern brothers, one of them. And basically he says, hey, I've been thinking about you guys since our call. And essentially he's like, you know what? Hell yeah. You, my brother and I were talking, you guys remind us of us like when we were younger and started the company, and we think it's so cool. And if you guys are passionate about it and it's the best thing ever, basically he's like, go for it. And so I'm like, he like pumped us up, which is so awesome. So that's that part of the story. And then there was another person that I spoke with, just me, with a pretty well-known company, and I'll never forget, he told me similar sentiments, like, you'll love it, but, and I remember he said to me, he goes, if you're willing to have your hair on fire every single day, then do it. If not, don't even get near it. And so that was an interesting, and we've definitely, but, so yeah, that's how that went down.
So when did you go, okay, we're going to move? Pick up the family.
Yeah, that was much later in the process. So I was under this kind of, ridiculous
that you're going to live
in my head that I was going to live in California and do this, and frankly, Stuart was like, yeah, totally do that. And so I had come out here 2 or 3 times basically just to meet with them and plan and just kind of keep thinking through it. And ultimately, it goes back to what I was saying, like that I was convinced the way we had to do this was to partner with a bigger mortgage company, leverage them, learn from them and all that. And so, once Stuart got on board, the answer was clear, right? He had to approach, his big brothers in the industry, right? Jay and Keith, and lean in and have that conversation and see if they're interested and see if they can help. Because frankly, they had done something like this already.
Right.
And so, we got to that point where it was like, we've got to do it. And so it was a lot of build up. Stuart was nervous as hell to talk to these guys. and, to have the conversation, and ultimately he did, and he can tell you more about that. But ultimately the outcome of that was they're like, okay, let's figure it out. So I flew out here to meet with them. And so we had like a half day meeting, if you will, at a conference room somewhere. I think, where were we? Talking Stick or something. It was kind of funny.
And then you guys went out to a spring training game. I didn't get invited to that either.
But the bottom line is I
still hold grudges.
I know, I love you.
We had a good meeting, kind of covered a lot of things.
It's an interesting
so many things that we didn't even think to cover that we should have, right? You look back and you're like, oh my God, we didn't even talk about the right stuff. But ultimately, I left the meeting where they're like, let's do it. Let's, we'll do it. Here's the next steps. Let's, get this going. Get organized, get the legal paperwork in order, we agreed on a number, all this kind of stuff. And so flew back, went to dinner that evening when I got back to the Bay Area with my family.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? And I know Jeremy calls me the interrupter. I'm sorry. But just before you get to that part, so I remember dropping him off at the airport the first time he came out for the whiteboard deal.
I don't.
It took us a long time. We actually could have used Ryan putting that whiteboard together.
That's
that
true.
Thing was not easy. And so I remember he's about to get out of my truck at the airport, and I kind of knew I needed to say this, and I didn't want him to I didn't want to lose that opportunity. And I looked at him, I said, look, man, I know we're both thinking it. I'm just going to say it. I just want you to know that you don't have to move here. You don't have to uproot your family and the kids. We can figure this out virtually, right? We're coming out of the COVID virtual world. And I go, so just don't, if that's on your mind, because obviously it is, right?
Yeah.
And we had never even talked about it. I'm like, it's cool. Just, that I don't have that pressure on, I'm not thinking that way. And so I said that, and then.
Yeah. So I get on the plane, and in my mind, I'm convinced I'm going to live in the Bay Area and commute back here while starting a company. And we go to dinner, and I'm just bringing Kristen up to speed with the conversation, and my kids are at the table, and I'm like, so it's a go, we're going to do this. And she's like, that's awesome. So I guess we got to move to Arizona. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, we have to move to Arizona. I'm like, no. She's like, Jeremy, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. You think you're going to start a company and just be in another state where it's not based and no employees are, and frankly, an industry that you have no experience in? Yeah, right. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And on top of that, if you think you're going to travel every week, then you're just delusional, because you like to go to all the kids' sporting stuff. You coach their football team. You won't want that. It'll drive you crazy. It'll cause an issue. And guess what we're going to have to do then is we're going to have to move in a year or in 2. I'd rather move now, when the kids are not yet in mid-school, not in high school, make it easier and just do it. And so again, true to, Kristen, that's how she is. She's just blunt.
How did Cole and Clay feel about that?
They didn't love it.
Yeah.
I think Clay was younger, so it wasn't as much of a shock to the system. And I think initially both of them were fine conceptually, but I think as it's really happening and you're getting prepared to move and all of that, it starts to sink in a little bit. And so definitely it was tough for Cole, because he was the older one, really involved in sports, had great friends. So that was, frankly, that's probably the hardest thing within this, is just, the actual move and the ramifications, frankly, that has on your family.
Yeah.
But here we are.
He's thriving, though. He might be the most thriving.
He's doing
way.
well at this point. His first year was tough. I mean, it's just, again,
But he made a lot of friends really fast.
That first year, he kind of struggled a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he went to Hopi. And, I just don't think he hit his stride. And he played, full-time competitive soccer. But as you know, the soccer clubs are not like school-based. And so, he made some friends, but I think he was still just, and he's told us this, and it actually breaks my heart. He's like, I was depressed that first year. And when he says that, I'm like, wow, you really were that bad? So that was hard. But yeah, at this point, he's thriving. He's thriving so much that he is driving Kristen and I crazy with his nonsense.
I see him more. I see him a bit.
Yeah, he seems to have figured it out.
Yeah.
So he's doing good.
So then you guys broke it to the kids, and within how many months you're like, okay, we got to find a house.
It was like overdrive.
Well, I remember you called me I don't know how soon after your dinner. I don't know if it was a day or a week or whatever, but I remember he called me and he's like, hey, so, there was no pleasantries. It was like, hey, so we're going to move out there. And my heart sank into my stomach. I'm like, oh, and now I'm starting to go through what did I do? Yeah. Right.
You're still doing that.
No, I'm over that. Oh, I'm way out of that.
No, but I know you're still stressed out about just stuff. Okay, no, you're not. No, it's perfect.
I'm great. But that's where I was like, for me, it was like, this just got super real.
Yeah.
Guy's going to move.
Bring his family.
Holy
uproot.
shit.
Yeah.
My godsons are going to hate me. What happened? So, but it was also exciting at the same time, because not that I was ever thinking this, but to Kristen's point, obviously it's better for all of us if he's here, right? Thank you, Kristen, by the way, if you ever watch this. And so, that was an interesting time.
Yeah, but it was fast. So basically that was right when school was ending, and Kristen's like, okay, we got to be out there. They got to be enrolled. I want them there day one for this upcoming summer. So basically, what's that, 2 months? Mm-hmm. We were in the middle of remodeling 2 bathrooms in our house. And so we then just kind of put it on overdrive with the contractor and you have to get this done. We met with a realtor. It was like, this is what we're doing. And so there was this big production to get in order, got the moving trucks, got everything ready. And then ultimately, and I was still working at Chase and didn't, tell them purposely. Yeah. Obviously it was fine. It was COVID. You work remotely. So we finally get to the end of the summer. Kristen's figured out where to get them enrolled. We came out here and visited and found a rental in Arcadia just to try and see if we liked the area. And ultimately, we then went on a little summer vacation for basically 3 weeks. And we went, packed up the house with the moving truck, left the next day, then they put it on the market. And we were on the road. Where were we? We were in Santa Cruz, and we went up to Tahoe. And great trip. When I was in Tahoe, I finally told my boss in my mid-year review that I was resigning.
Jeremy, you've done great this last year.
Which was kind of interesting. How'd it go? It actually went well. She was definitely surprised. We had actually a national business review the following day. And so I told her, and I'm like, hey, but just so you know, I'm planning to, participate. I'm not going to leave you hanging and all this. And she was surprised. I think for a lot of reasons. I'd been there 19 years. But they were very cool. She's like, can you stay on for, 120 days, and kind of help with the transition. So
I can take a paycheck.
Yeah, I'm like, sure, I can just do that.
Let's make it 180.
So no, they took it fine. But yeah, we were on the road when all that took place. And literally we show up in Arizona the day before school starts, right, to our rental, and our moving truck, of course, doesn't arrive.
That's why I started laughing. The moving trucks. Do you know this?
Yeah.
Disaster. Rinky-dink moving truck company.
Crackheads.
So Jeremy's calling me, and he's like, I don't know where the moving truck's supposed to be here. I can't get a hold of anybody. I don't know where any of our stuff is. It was already stressful enough, and now the moving truck's disappeared.
Yeah. So anyway, at least my sister lived here. So we went and moved in with her for a couple of days until the moving trucks showed up. But Kristen was a trooper, got the kids in school, the great time of year to move to Phoenix, 120 degrees, 1st of August.
Get the kids enrolled in school, sports.
Exactly. And just, it was just kind of full steam ahead, from that point on.
So you were already living here when we did our brand meeting with Root and River.
I think I wasn't here. I think that was that summer.
You were not? Okay.
I flew in for that, I believe, because we were doing, because that's all it was for, months leading up to launch, was just behind the scenes trying to get, licensing in place, all those kind of things. So yeah, we did the branding session that summer.
So let's talk a little bit about that part, because you had in your mind the bison just because of the storm thing, and into the storm. You'd heard this story about the American bison. It's not the bald eagle. Isn't. You want me to call on you right now? Okay. We have a time frame. Okay. Well, I think that like a 2-hour episode, we can cut this out. It's great because we're going to take so much of this information and use it for like marketing clips, for like recruiting and all this stuff. Yeah. This is going to be a long one. Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about the bison and how that whole thing came about, because the another road trip has something to do with this too. And I kind of put 2 and 2 together because I remember you telling me the story how you were I could have sworn you were in an RV.
Yeah, I was. So you nailed it. Good job.
I can't believe I remember so much stuff.
You are smart.
Being 50.
Best looking 50-year-old on the planet. So after the text message, hey, if you were serious, I'm serious, all that whole stuff. So we finally get to Yellowstone, which is where we were, kind of our final destination. And as you probably know, Yellowstone is full of bison, and it's a very beautiful place. And I still have the video. And I remember that, we're cruising in the RV through Yellowstone, and I look out, and there's 3 bison by themselves, no other bison in sight, majestic as it can be, this view. And they're just walking like together through this field, and it was a beautiful day, and it was just the perfect, like, not wind but breeze, and the like tall grass they were walking through was just like, going in like these big waves. And I'm like, oh, I gotta take a video of that. And as I'm taking it in my head, I'm like, oh my God, dude, that's me, Ryan and Jer, that's us. And at that moment though, I had 0 thoughts of the name of the company. I wasn't even thinking about bison. So that was just a moment where I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, that's the 3 of us, like, kind of going through and so if you want me to get into the naming thing, the way I remember it is, so, the RV trip was, of course, way before we got to the point where we had to name the company, right? I think it was at least 6 months.
Just back up for a second.
Yeah.
I've told this story so many times, and everybody that I've told this to is now going to think I'm a complete liar, because there was like 100 bison. Rachel's like, fuck it, it has to be bison. I could have sworn that was the story.
That is not the story.
Okay.
That's okay.
So
but
I knew we didn't want to make
too.
it. We did not want to name it the Madrid Crawford West law firm.
And exactly. And I think you and I, we had talked. It's like, it's at some point for us at least, it was time to like take the names off the door, right?
Yeah.
Make it about other people. We did that long enough, and we had fun doing it. It was fun when it lasted. So I remember the way I remembered, it might have been 8 months after the text message, we'll call it, and we had to start the legal process. Like, we need to do legal documents, to get licensing. And remember, we're all trying. This is before, I think, the Root and River session, and we're trying to figure out a name, and we're brainstorming, and the 3 of us are on like our first text like loop or whatever about this. We threw out some funny names, right?
Urban
Meadows.
That was mine.
Pioneer Mortgage.
I don't remember that one.
I know it's yours.
That one sucked. But
Hidden Valley.
No, it was Urban Meadow.
Was it Urban?
It was Urban Meadows.
Yeah,
and then
Meadows.
Someone goes, "That sounds like a rehab facility."
Yeah.
And
why we
so,
didn't use it.
but because the reason was because I was like, in my head, I'm like, I want something somewhat patriotic, something American strong, but without going so deep in that, right?
Yeah.
Because that's not what we're about necessarily, and just something strong, man, something like, and we all, I think, agreed that. And the other part of it was that, I know for me specifically, I didn't want mortgage in it. I didn't want mortgage, capital, finance. It's not that that's okay to do that, but to me it was like I started Googling every mortgage company I could think of, and it was like they all had that. And I'm like, let's be different. And we can tell that story if you want later about what we all went through with that. But and then I do remember at one point Jeremy's like, dude, name it. Like, he was like, just name it. We don't even care. Like, we have to start the documents, and you need a name to start the documents. And I'm driving in my truck. I remember I was going to Lucy's right here at McCormick for some meeting. Breakfast meeting, and I started thinking about, like, okay, we need to name this. And I remembered how we would always say to our team back in the day,
Chaos.
The mortgage industry is chaos. You cannot perfect it. And all we can do is manage the chaos, the best of our ability. So I started thinking about chaos. And, your mind's a weird place. And then I started going into like storms and chaos and storms. And then I remembered the story about the bison being the only animal that runs into a storm. And I thought everybody knew that, but as we can probably all test, you'll meet people that know that, and then you'll meet lots of people that still don't know that, it's a cool fact. And so I remember Googling that and being like, is this actually true? Because we don't want to.
Yeah.
And I did, and I'm like, oh my God, this is real. This is what they do. It's the only animal that does that. And I'm like, that's cool. Like, let's face it head on. Let's not run from problems. That's who we were anyway. Problems came up on a file on a day-to-day basis or whatever. Like, we would never run and hide. And I think that's one of the reasons people liked working with us. And we'd create solutions. So I just started thinking, I'm like, oh, the buffalo. And this is all in my head as I'm driving. And then I'm like, buffalo. And then I went, bison. I'm like, oh, way better than buffalo, right? And then I remember texting both you guys as I'm trying to park. And I'm like, bison. And I don't even remember what I said. And of course, it's like that moment of like, are they going to hate it? And I don't remember who texted first, but you were like, I love it. He went to see you and was a buffalo, so he was like, hell yeah.
No, my response was, are you joking? I fucking love that. I'm go boss. All day long.
I think that is true. And then I was like, gosh, dang it, is Ryan going to like it, And then you loved it, and it was like, okay, we're halfway there with the name, right? So that's how that came out.
And then we went and met with, we had our root session, we called it, right?
Branding session
that Jeremy didn't want to do.
Hold on, let's back up.
That's true.
Not that he didn't just not want to do it. He surely didn't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
He's like, why do we need a branding company?
But in his defense, it's like none of us really knew what we were doing. We just knew that we needed to like try to do things that our partners did like later on in the process and through their words, right? So let's just try to do things right from the beginning, but we didn't really know what that meant, right? And when we met Emily, and we had I think it took about 30 minutes, maybe even less, before we're like, okay, it does make sense to create a vision and a mission and core values. They are going to be here to help us figure out what's the second half of. We knew that we wanted it to be 2 words because we thought Root and River was so cool. But we didn't want it to be Bison Mortgage, Bison Financial, Bison Capital, even though we still kind of did want to do that even afterwards. But luckily we had, somebody there with us that knew so much about the bison, and it wasn't just that they run into the storm. It's like as they work as a team when they hunt and dismantle, so to speak, the bison. Everybody's got a certain role in that process. Every single aspect of the bison is used. And so we equated that to our team and the operations and everything that we could do. We felt like, oh, okay, this is going to be amazing. And didn't hurt that she was such a good artist. That was one thing I remember. So she was drawing all that stuff because she couldn't connect. And there was just a lot of really, really cool things that made us really go, okay, the bison's the right word. So what are we going to do next? And then when ventures came up, everybody thinks of ventures, venture capital. It's a financial term, which it is, as well. But it also means adventure, right? So we're going.
Yeah, it's if you Google ventures, the textbook definition is going on a daring or risky journey, which is exactly what we were doing.
Right, we were, but we also didn't know for sure if it was still going to make sense. We were. In some aspects, even to this day, I still think that it was a very arrogant move, right, of us to be like, all right. I do, because we're like, oh, we're this cool. Like, we're just gonna. Who cares if they don't know if it's a mortgage company or not? Because we spent a lot of time explaining to everybody why we named it Venture. But in Emily's explanation to that was that's going to create a conversation every time you talk to somebody, right? And 9 times out of 10, it does make sense to people. They're like, oh, dude, that is kind of cool. There's still aspects of it being obscure, so to speak, of like, okay, what exactly do you guys do? We get that question all the time. But from the way our business runs, and it's always ran, it's been heavy relationship driven anyways, right? Partners driven, friends, family, just be involved in the community, realtors and financial advisors and all that stuff. So it makes it easy to have that conversation. And I do like having that conversation. I think people resonate with it really well.
All right, so now that you've been at this for more than 2.5 years, brand, what did that mean to you, Stuart, back in the Crawford team days, and how important is it to you now?
I think that brand has always been important to us, to Ryan and I. I mean, I remember before Ryan even came into the picture and I wanted to call it the Crawford team, I remember getting all these mock-ups done and going through that whole process. And, I think there was a point where I just knew brand was important, right? You want to brand yourself, you want to brand anyway. So I think and then of course when Ryan came on board, it, put steroids on it. So I guess I've always understood, at least since that point, which is a long time ago, that brand is important and, consistently putting out the same message so, people see it and they feel it. I think when we went to the Bison Root and River session, I don't necessarily think that changed the way I thought about branding. I think we already knew how important it was, hence why we hired Root and River. But with your help, Trisha Madrid, I do think that I personally gained a much better understanding of, because let's be honest, right? You're like our brand police, and I tried to do a blue Bison shirt, and everybody yelled at me. And so, but I started to realize that you really need to be on point. You have these fence posts, these parameters, and if you can stay within those with everything you do, it is more powerful. And so, thank you for teaching us that. But that's how I'd answer the question.
I wasn't setting that up to give me accolades.
I didn't say you were.
I was just curious because brand is something that out and about in the community that we hear is like, oh my God, your logo's so cool, and can I get a hat? And love the story behind. So brand has just emerged as a big part.
It was definitely important to us. I don't want to necessarily speak for these guys, but to make sure that the name of the company and the brand of the company had meat to it and had multiple layers to it. And even today, I think most people don't realize that. They just think, like you said, Ryan, into the storm, cool, you guys run into the storm. But it's to me, that's 20% of what the brand actually means.
I actually would think that the expertise without empathy is failure is the thing that resonated with me the most, beyond even more than into the storm. Like when I remember when that was said, when we came up with that, because the education is such a big thing and the consultation is such a big part of our company, that to me was just such a cool thing. And I still don't understand why we don't have any shirts with that on it, but it is one of those things though, to the brand, that moving forward, I think we really need to focus on the next chapter of our brand awareness. I think that is such a huge part of it. And I don't want to go back to Chris, but we had a friend that just did the loan with us recently, and this guy's involved in so much stuff. He had 50 some K1s, and he's just always in stuff. And he is a very intelligent guy, and he's just hyper aware of things. And I've never seen a guy read a contract so fast, highlight it, send it back to me. And his biggest takeaway when we were in Coronado together was, I don't understand. How do you have a person like Bree working with you? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, how does she do all that? And how do you pay her? We pay her well. And she's a part of our leadership team, but she makes good money to do what she does. And this is what she likes to do. And yes, is it normal? No, she's not a normal person as far as how good she is at her job. But I think that we've done a really good job with all the people that kind of run that level of the operations side of things. But we're moving ahead too far.
Did you see his
yes.
Equal review?
Yes, we did.
Jeremy, did you want to answer the branding question?
Do you want me to?
I would love to hear your answer.
Oh, okay. So as you guys said, I was the most skeptical about the need for, a branding company, and all that kind of stuff. Because to me, coming into it, I'm like, we're a mortgage company. What in the hell? This is not a big deal.
Right.
I remember it was maybe you, Ryan, said that somebody had told you they wish they'd run a company for a while. They wish they had done this a lot earlier.
That was Jay.
Was it Jay that said
Yeah.
that? So, and again, I still didn't believe it, and I didn't know what to expect. It was, though, once we got into it, I think it was really helpful to all of us because it did help us. We knew what we wanted to do, right? Run a mortgage company, grow a mortgage company, create a brand and a legacy. But it really helped us to formulate our messaging, right? And so we spent a lot of time, like, what do you want to do? How do you want to be perceived? You know, what do you hate about the mortgage industry? All that kind of stuff. And it was good to brainstorm all day and kind of get that on paper and think through it. And then the ultimate outcome was it left us with something that I think is now kind of the foundation of the company in terms of our messaging, right? And the core values, you know, that we live on and that we all agreed to and that we get to continue to reference in our meetings. And so it was, you know, powerful. It was a powerful foundation to kind of, I think, then really take this to the next level. And again, then the next extension was logo, and you guys did a great job designing that thing. That was kind of a lot of fun to see. And it's hilarious because, you know, again, when I think of a logo, you know, you think of like Nike or apparel companies.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've got cool stuff. I was in Starbucks literally last week, and the guy at the window was like, "What brand is that hat?" I'm like, "Oh, that's my mortgage company." He's like, "Man, that's really nice."
That's happened to me at Starbucks as well.
And he's like, "I'm a skateboarder. Like, if I could put that on my, you know, Instagram," I'm like, "Well, I might have a hat for you at some point." So
Yeah.
but no, I think at this point, and you know, Stuart said it, Trisha's done a great job, you know, keeping us consistent, right? That, you know, you've got to have those brand standards, you've got to have the right colors, the right, you know, font, and you just have to be consistent and deliver. And I think there's a lot of companies that do that. And I'm very proud, frankly, when I see what we put out in social and some of the marketing collateral that we build, because it does, to me, show that we're pretty polished and thoughtful around that. And it's big. You know, we're a small company, but I think it's changed my mindset about the importance of it. And this year, it's one of our strategic objectives is amplifying the brand. And so, and we did a grading session, frankly, 2 weeks ago about how we feel like we're doing this year in those. And I think we all agreed that's probably the one category we're doing the best in this year. So nice job, Trisha.
I didn't know that. Thanks.
And I will add to that if you guys remember, so after we finally came up with the name, Ryan and I, we did the sit downs with all of our team members and said, "Hey, we're jumping off this cliff. We want you to go with us. Will you go with us?" And then once everybody signed up, which was very cool too, right? Everybody said yes from our original kind of production team. And we did a launch party in that October, I remember. And I remember we were kind of half joking during our speeches and that, and we had all the wives and everybody there that, you know, at least we have a great logo. So if we can't figure out the mortgage company, we'll be an apparel company.
Yeah. And we literally probably could at this point, the coolness we have. So, all right. So we start the company in March of 2022. And April, the economy basically, I shouldn't say the economy, like rates just skyrocket, like it to a level they've never in the history of all mortgages, right? So all of a sudden we're at 3%. Next thing we know, we're at 4, 5, 6, 7. We've been sitting in the 7s for a long time. Now we're back in the 6s. So, you know, one of the questions was, what are the sacrifices that we've had to make? I don't know how even deep we can even get into this part and be without. I'm not trying to do this for people to feel sorry for us or us to feel sorry for ourselves, but you know, I think it's going to be part of the origin story, right? We went through a time like, holy cow, you know, and I know that you dealt with this personally a lot too, and I did as well, but more you. It's like, and Jeremy for sure, but it was mostly about Jeremy, right? You know, we bring Jeremy out here to help us run this company, and his wife and kids are here. He buys a house, and all of a sudden we're like, holy cow, we can't even pay ourselves, right? And thank God he's so smart that he had money saved up. But that was a stressful time for all of us. I mean, like we've all been through our little moments of like, God dang, was this like, what are we gonna do? And it was like Groundhog's Day every day, right? Oh, it's gonna be better this month. No, it's gonna be better this month. You know, and so sacrifices besides just, you know, financial, I think for me personally, like just knowing that there's two sides of it. The stress of knowing that we have all these people working for us and they're looking for us to like to lead them, and they're in a business where they understand that the whole market it's the same anywhere you go. Nobody's thriving at this point, right? It's just very, very difficult to get business, but we're also trying to learn how to grow a business. We're learning how to like run a business. We had to do everything, and Jeremy's, I'll just touch on this. So Jeremy's role is the CFO, COO, right? And I figure like now I look back and he probably did a lot of this stuff as a sales manager for Chase because he knows how to do a lot of the things I think that like you don't just organically know how to do. So he's been very good at keeping things organized and structured for the operations side of things, but also he's the guy that looks at the financials every day, right? And he has to see all the things that's going, holy cow, how does my life fit into this situation? So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
A lot to unpack there. That's a question. No, I mean, look, when we obviously talked about this, the industry was coming off of two of the best years ever. Right. Refinances, just where it was crack of the industry. And honestly, I think there was still a tremendous amount of optimism that even if the Fed did move rates, it wasn't going to be a big impact, all that kind of stuff. So as we're building and modeling, all of our models have us doing volumes, which, frankly,
I honestly feel like at one point we did say, and I know personally, I was like, we could probably do $1 billion.
Yeah, no, and so like again, you go into it and we're planning, and so like August of 21 all the way up to our launch in March of 22, it's all like getting everything in order, and the market's still relatively healthy. We launch in March of 22, literally coinciding with the Fed starting on their most aggressive rate hike ever, and literally the volume just turned off. Like, you could just see it turn off dramatically, 50%, 60%, like, and so it was a stomach punch, right?
Yeah.
Because you're a young company, we're leaders trying to figure out what we're doing and how we're doing it. We've got employees that you hit on, and we had to make a ton of sacrifices, and those were without question, the most trying, I would say, 15 months of my personal career. The stress for everybody was, tremendous, but, we're certainly not out of it, but we've, I feel great about where we are right now, where the market is stabilized. I think there's a lot of optimism, and you get a chance to look back, and as much as it sucked, it might've been the best thing that ever happened to us, right? Because the end result is it really made us grow up, right, on the fly and make a lot of tough decisions and figure out our expense load, figure out our compensation structure across the board, figure out, do we have the, the guts and the wherewithal, to grind through this. And so, yeah, you learn a bunch in the bad cycles. You learn a bunch in the bad times, and we got a lot to learn, but I do think it was good to get that out of the way as opposed to coming into something that was just easy. And so, I don't know, fingers crossed, man. We still got some work ahead of us on a lot of levels, but no, it was, grew up, huh?
We did, yeah, for sure. We are still growing up, but I think that, having our team, like you said before, kind of stay with us, Trisha, obviously, too, through the thick and thin, seeing like them knowing that they're barely able to like pay their bills is tough, right? But also we're in the same boat, right? We're scraping by trying to figure out how to make things work, but through those times, we've done a really good job of growing the financials of this company without taking, money out. But like the fact of where we're at right now through what we've been through is pretty incredible as far as like our economics side of things, and we're just getting better as we go. It's been it's tough. What about your story if you want to go that deep. But
I would just say that, as you both know, and you know more intimately because of where we came from in the mortgage world, right? Loyalty, friendships, people that have done things for you your whole career helped you, frankly, be who you are professionally, which, of course, I'm talking about Jay and Keith at VIP, and being there since day one when the company started, and then having to have that dinner with them that he joked about earlier, which I was scared of, right? Which I was. I mean, many sleepless nights. That tugged on my heartstrings big time, as you guys know. And it was hard for me. And it was hard for me to, even though we partnered with our old partners, which is fantastic and it's been great, it's still a tough thing for all of us to go through. I know that it's not just me and you, but right, it was hard for them too. We all had to sort of look each other in the eyes and say, it's going to change. Like the relationship we all have, what we've all been doing, it's changing. And it's changing for good reasons, right? For the reasons Jared said earlier. Like, I'll never forget when I took those two to dinner and I basically said, look, guys, this is what I want to do in my next chapter. And by the way, they're used to that, right? We've done that with them a few times over our career. And but this is obviously a big one. This was like the earthquake that, this was a 9.2. Is that a big earthquake?
I don't know.
I think so.
Big one.
It's a big one. Yeah, he's a San Francisco guy, knows. But I remember saying, the three things, here's my three whys: regret, control, and legacy. I said, and in no particular order, I said, control's an obvious one. We wanted to have a little bit more control over our business, the direction that we do. We want to make decisions and just fly. Legacy was obviously just we wanted to build something for our families that we could be proud of and they would be proud of us, and legacy is a huge thing for all of us. And then regret was probably the biggest one, which was to Jeremy's point about the rocking chair. That's always my joke. It was like, I'd rather be sitting on my rocking chair when I'm 80 years old thinking about my life, knowing that we tried this and failed miserably, but we tried, rather than sitting there going like, dang, I should have done it, right? And that's what personally drove me the most to take this chance. And, the emotions were just through the roof, right? Imposter syndrome, right? I'm not the guy. I can't do this. I don't know how I brought these two together. Like, this is crazy. And I probably, in my head, took on more of the brunt of thinking I was responsible for all this. And you two were amazing. I can remember a couple lunches where I wasn't in a great mental place, and this is after Bison started. And to Jeremy's point, we literally launched the company when one engine in the plane had went out, right? And then we were like trying not to crash into the mountain, and it was like, oh my God. And we watched our balance sheet, right? All of our hard-earned money that we've worked our careers to be able to even do something like this, which we're very grateful for. I mean, I remember watching the balance sheet just go, and it was like, oh my God, what is going? It's campfire money. We just threw money in a campfire. What did we do? And I thought about you guys and your families a lot, and so that was a huge piece of it. I don't know. I forgot where I was going with that, but it was just that whole feeling of like, I'm not this guy. I can't do this. I don't know why I thought I could do this. Like, the lunches. And I remember having lunch with you guys once at Hero, little sushi. And I remember you both kind of like big brothering me and being like, dude, like, we're our own men. We made our own decision. Like, this is, you don't have to like take the brunt of like, you told us to do this, which, and you guys don't know this, but that like helped me because it helped me work through like okay. And that's an testament to you guys' character and how badass you guys are. And so anyway.
I think that there was an embarrassing part as well. Like you said, imposter syndrome. I was embarrassed too, because we were riding high, it was something great. You weren't in this business at this time, but like for us, like, dude, we were making great money and doing all these fancy things and buying stuff and going on trips. And then all of a sudden one day, all that's gone. Right. And then all the praise and everybody, like friends, were like, are you okay? It went from like, dude, you're killing it, to, are you going to make it? And I'm like, fuck, dude, I don't know. And it's like, but it did get embarrassing and things sometimes. I did have the same sort of feelings as you did, a lot of times. And, it, especially like in the circles we run with, there's a lot of like keeping up the Joneses sort of stuff. And But
I have to interrupt on that. One of the greatest things I've heard as of late, especially in the last 4 or 5 months about you, Ryan, is you have shown humility in a way that most people had never seen before. And it was very, I think people actually maybe respected you even more. It wasn't like a ding that now you couldn't do all those things. They're like, damn, he's a real human. So you became more approachable. We were at a happy hour a couple months ago, and one of the agents came up to me and he's like, I watched your brother's guest episode on Andrew Rafal's podcast, and he's like, it gave me chills. And I sent him a message. He's like, that was the best thing I've heard a person in our industry say since all this went to shit. So as your sister, I think it's great that you all have been very vulnerable and transparent. And in the end, I think it's going to actually improve your public persona. You know, you're not so glossy. You're real humans.
yeah, and I think that there's maybe a misconception on me that I wasn't, but
No, I'm not meant to say that.
I think what Trish is saying, what I'm hearing is you were very honest externally just about the struggles and the sacrifices and all that. And so, and like you said, it might be embarrassing, but you just kind of owned it and, just rolled through it and made you, I think, probably more real to a lot of people that like, yeah, this isn't easy. I mean, you launch a company, everybody's excited for you. I mean, I think we all felt like not embarrassment. Yeah, there's an element of it. It's because you're like, oh my God, I did this. Everybody thinks I'm going to be successful. Everybody thinks I'm smart.
Right.
And holy shit, this sucks.
Yeah.
Like, this is not going great. And so, yeah, again, you learn, but I think we I don't know. We had like a couple of moments, like early on, launching day one was awesome, right? Because we finally got there. And I just remember that day. It was like D-Day. Like, we're turning everything on. Here we freaking go.
I still wasn't an employee yet.
And it was like, I think we were all probably quite nervous that day. And then the day kind of ended. I'm like, what the hell? Everything worked. Like, it just happened. And so it was like, that was like a real, like reaffirming moment in this whole thing where, okay, the thing works. We can get stuff done. We can, get loans, through the process. The employees are coming over, all that stuff. But then again, we just hit that cycle where then all of a sudden there's just not enough volume, not enough revenue. And we were just struggling, honestly, through it. And I don't think we were, we just weren't ready to make the tough decisions at that time. And honestly, we, Jay and Keith and all of us had a number of heated conversations around it. And it got to the point where it's like, yeah, okay, we've got to figure out the plan. Finally got a plan, not, finally got a plan, but like a plan to address, the things we needed to address to stabilize it and to get, the P&L to the black on a consistent basis. And once those kind of took hold, we got back to this place where, okay, we're just kind of coasting along. And so that was, to me, a real critical moment where it showed we had the guts, honestly, to make those tough decisions, to sacrifice personally. I mean, again, like you guys talked about, no pay and all that kind of stuff. Like it's hard, but you get there. And that's what I'm saying now. It's like, now we're at this great place where we've been able to make those tough choices. We've been able to really prioritize the things we need to do in the business to make it great. And so, that's where I'm just full of optimism, frankly, with where it puts us. And we're just scratching the surface. I mean, we're still a small company, but we've again. So once we stabilized, that was good. And then again, I think the most reaffirming part in all of this actually was last year when we won the best places to work for the small business. That was just like remarkable.
That was the question, but I know the answer was going to be all three of us. So I think that the question really is like, what did that mean to you guys individually, right? And Jeremy, I think just answered that question. But what about you?
I mean, you guys know I was pumped about it.
I mean, I know I welled up at the table.
I think what's so cool about that award is your employees have to answer. I don't even know what question. I don't even know what survey they get. Right? We are not allowed to take it. And it's literally your employees. It's not a pay to play, right? It's not some of these things where you pay and then you're in a magazine and you're the top whatever. And we've done that, right?
Yeah.
We ran that gauntlet. But this one was like authentic. It was like our people were like, we love it here. We love what you guys have created. We love, and by the way, we've all created. They're part of it, and that was awesome. And I remember talking to the Phoenix business people, and they're like, to the people who've been there so long, they're like, I think to our knowledge, like no one's ever taken number one being this young of a company. And I remember thinking like, God, that's, to Jeremy's point, that's pretty dang cool. And so that award meant a ton, and I think it validated for us that we did focus on the right things when we knew we had to, and we had to have those hard conversations. And frankly, not to really segue, but obviously that was a tough time for all three of us. And you guys know how tough it was on me, and it was mentally trying, and I couldn't be. I mean, you guys know I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. These guys would be texting me. They're like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "I can't do it today. You guys run the meeting. You guys do this. You guys cover for me." And the best part about it was always like, "We got you. We got you. We got you." Now I think at a certain point it was like, "Hey, dude, like." We need you, but maybe not need me, but like we would like to have you back.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that part of the story, but you guys were there for me personally, and I couldn't be happier now that we started a company in the worst time, because I can't tell you how many other founders, leaders, whatever I've talked to that when I go to tell that story, they say, well, that's the best time to start a mortgage company, right? You might as well get your ass kicked day one than have the New Year's Eve party of COVID for 5 years. I know it wasn't 5 years. And then get your ass kicked, because then you're riding on your high horse, right? So, and for me personally, going through all of that and having you guys to help me through it, which is I can never repay you for, is, I tell my wife this, I go, we learned so much. I learned so much through that now if our children ever go through something like that, I feel great knowing that I can look them in the eyes and say, I know what you're going through. And they're going to be like, okay, Dad. It's like, no, I was there, and let me tell you a story. And then I'll tell them that story, and they're going to be like, holy shit, right? And I think that's a powerful thing, to be able to live that journey and help other people, right? So, yeah.
I think a lot of that stems to our company culture, right? So we win the award. Your care factor was so strong at that time. It was leading you into depression, basically, and the imposter syndrome. All that stuff was because you cared so much, which led to everybody in the company loving you and respecting you so much. That is the reason why we won that award. I think at the end of the day, more people knew than you probably even knew. I don't know if they knew, but I think that I think everybody understands how much we care. And, we run this company like a true company, but it is built on giving a shit about people. Nobody's here. Nobody's a number here, for sure not. It's funny because yesterday I was walking to the car, I was leaving, and you were talking to Eric, and he was talking about something.
Construction loans.
Something. And I just made some smart ass comment to you, or to him. And he just goes, fuck you. Fuck you, Ryan. And I walked out the door laughing myself.
And then I looked at him and I said, Ryan can't not.
And I go, this is what I love so much, is because I know Eric comes to me for things that he needs help, right? And I know that he knows I'm there for him stuff. But we can also joke around with our people in a fun way where they like being around, where they can be like, fuck you, dude. And I'm like, yeah, it's funny. This is my friend. He just happens to work here. He works with me, not for me, right? And I love that. And I think that as we grow, there's going to be elements of we're going to make mistakes where people are going to come and maybe it's not the right fit. And we really, really, really want to be particular on who comes over, but they may not be the right fit because they're super fun and cool, but it does cost money. And these are the things we've learned, right? We learn how much it costs to have an employee that works for us, especially if they need benefits, right? Are they full-time or are they part-time? How do you pay their compensation? They may be our best friend, but like that's also hitting the P&L in a negative way. And like these are all things I didn't know, right? And I think there's a lot of things. You got employee taxes, you got Social Security. There's a lot of stuff that we didn't know. Jeremy may have known, but you didn't know and I didn't know. But at the end of the day, as we grow, I think even for people that don't necessarily know who we are or we don't know who they are, most of them are going to adapt to the right situation and the culture that we have, and they're going to love it. That's where I think, like, as we grow this company, I really want people out there to like want to come to work with us because of who we are and what we're building. Because not only are we just a great cultural fit for a lot of people, and we have all these different avenues so people can come over from an LO standpoint to grow their business, but we also have just a lifestyle that a lot of places don't have. And when you're coming out of such a terribly hard era of this business, why wouldn't you want to be with people that give a shit about you and really care, that you can like have fun with and want to be around, and know that the leaders of the company, they'll do anything for you, really, at the end of the day. That's my soapbox. I'll get off.
Oh, it's true, and it's the other thing I'm proud of us all for going through that is, we can't lead people somewhere we've never been, and so we've hacked through the jungle with our machetes, not having a damn clue which way we were going and which way was north, right. And now we do. To some degree, and now it gives us the confidence as leaders, so to speak, that we can look an Eric or whomever in the eyes and say, we know what you're going through, we know where you're at, we've been there, come with me. I already hacked this trail this way, and I took all the splinters, and I got bit by the mosquitoes, and it's big mosquitoes.
Scary.
Big, huge ones. But anyway, but we can take you there, right? And then, by the way, if we get to the end of the path and we got to keep chopping, well, fuck it. Let's go chop it together. At least we're having fun too, right? To your point, like, I think you get to a certain age where you realize that if you're not having fun, what is the point, right? Like, if you're not smiling every day at some point in the day or laughing at something, it's like that's dumb. Like, we're not here that long on this earth, and for all we know, a meteor's coming tomorrow and we're going to be dinosaurs. So let's get things done, but let's also have a ton of fun, right? I didn't mean for that to rhyme, by the way, but
I would just kind of summarize it as like, if you look at our success thus far, it's so cliche to say culture, but honestly, it is that we've just got such a great team. We're blessed, and they're just talented and they care. And I think there's a couple of things within that is, number one, and I shared this with these guys, like in running teams before, like if you've got a good performer but they're a cancer, it just kills you. It kills your team. It sucks your energy. It drains over, and I think we've done a really good job not having those kind of people that can erode, just the morale with everybody. But I think at the end of the day, Stuart leads with his heart. And it goes back to what Ryan was saying. Like, Stuart truly wants to take care of his people. And that's always kind of front and center in decisions that he's making and the strategy that we're employing. And it's given us the benefit thus far that it's helped kind of create this place where people, they know that. They feel it, and as a result, they give their all, and they really kind of make us different. And then we have a lot of fun. We do. It's not stuffy, but I also think it's our biggest challenge because we want to grow. We've got aspirations to be a much bigger company, and maintaining that culture and that vibe and that family, it's probably going to be the hardest thing we have to continue to work on, as we keep looking forward. So good luck. Keep doing it, Stuart.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I've seen it with many other companies, real estate companies specifically. You get too big, and all of a sudden, luckily we're a three-headed monster. I think a lot of the companies are just a single individual person kind of leading the company. You know, we have our own lanes, but we also have our own relationships. I think, you know,
It's true.
People come to us, different people come to each one of us for different things, right? And you know, that helps a lot. And I tell people all the time, like, there's no way in hell. Like, specifically, I was talking to Freeman yesterday, and he was telling me that there's this like incredible deal for these Lennar homes that you can go in right now, and they'll do 4.5% with a 3-1 buy down. So basically, you're coming in at 1.5%. So he's losing these deals, and 2 of them have to be his agents. Yada 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 yada. And he goes, yeah, you know, it's so hard because it's like I need like my P&L to be good, and I'm still in the red. I need to get to the black, and I think that November, December will be great. And then his question was, do you guys really like doing this? Like, do you really like running a branch and running a company? And I was like, yeah, we do, but only because Jeremy does the finances, right? And, you know, he's running the COO side of things, and Stuart does the CEO side of things, and I do the CDO side. It's like I would never in a million years be able to do it. I know I wouldn't be able to. It would be way too overwhelming, and I wouldn't want to. I'm like, this is boring. Like, this is nothing what I signed up for. So we're in a little bit of a league of our own. And as we move forward, coming out of this you know, tough times, that, you know, obviously things are getting better, and we start getting more busy, and you know, loans start coming in, and we start growing. I'm excited for people to understand who we are. I'm excited for them to, you know, to see these sort of like these videos, like the podcast we're doing today. It's the first time the 3 of us have sat down in 2.5 years, really, and done this, right? To understand who we are as people. But not only that, you know, we were a top 5 team in this state for 7 years. So it's not like we don't know how to do high production. You know, we've been doing the loans for all the owners of all these brokerages for a very long time, and they're our close friends. We've been partners with all the big real estate companies. People know that we're good at doing deals. We're just not out there as much anymore, so it doesn't. So maybe like there's a little. It's been diluted a little bit of like what's really going on, but we have so many allies, I think, that will help us grow. But we're not irrelevant, right? And our brand's huge. So as we're I think recruiting, we're trying to grow the company in every other aspect, just even not just LOs, but you know, everything from real estate, you know, deals and stuff like that. But this is the type of thing I think that is going to drive people to want to work with us, and testimonials, right? Everybody can talk about anybody can talk about any other mortgage company or LO, right? I just don't feel like we ever get any real negative talk. Right? People they do a deal with us, it's going to be 9 times out of 10 positive feedback. People are going to be wowed. You know, but just the reality of this world is, you know, sometimes it's people are, you know, the customer's not the right customer. The client's not the right client.
By the way, on that note, I don't know if you guys remember, but in our branding session, the one Jeremy didn't want to do and now loves, do you guys remember when Emily said, who do you not want to work with? Who are you going to repel? And I think all of us were like, what are you talking about? We want to do a loan for everybody on the planet, right?
Right.
And their website at Root and River had something about, you know,
we're not for everyone.
Yeah, we're not for everybody. And I remember in that moment thinking like, I don't get it. And then I started to get it, and I'm like, oh, and that's a really cool thing that I think we've done inorganically, which is, you know, realizing like, hey, we don't have to do this for this person, right? We can do what's right for us and right for our model. And I do just want to say one more thing on the 3-headed monster, which is, you know, I was talking to someone that I'm close to yesterday that reached out for some advice in his business. And I told a little bit of the story about the 3 of us and being the 3-headed monster. And he goes, man, I don't have that. I wish I had that. And I go, dude, do you think I ever would have done this by myself? I go, doesn't mean I'm not capable. Doesn't mean Ryan couldn't do it by himself. Doesn't mean Jeremy couldn't do it by himself. But who the hell wants to do that? There's zero fun in that. You be stressed all the time. Everything hits your plate at the end of the day. And I just think, to your point, Ryan, like what the three of us have is so special. And I do remember at one point, the three of us in the very beginning saying, our friendships will always come first. If this business ever comes in front of our friendships, we'll shut her down, and then we'll do the apparel company. But right, that's an important thing, and then we live by that. It's like that's the most important thing in the world is our relationships. So I love you guys, and I'm so glad that we did this together. I think it became even more special than we ever thought it could be.
What do you think is, when we're looking for people to come work with us, like, what is your ideal person from a loan officer standpoint? Or is there even one?
I think that for me personally, the things that you can't teach, the things that are innate that you're born with, which are drive, being ambitious, being a relationship person, being somebody who has huge care. It all comes down to care factor. And I think one of you said that earlier about that. I mean, care factor is everything, right? It's like we're talking to a recruit right now, and I said to her, I said, look, we're not the type of company that says we have this hole, come plug it. Well, what if that person doesn't want to do the 10 things that are required to plug that hole? What if that person loves 5 of them but loves 5 other things? Well, let's find people that innately have the drive, the things we're looking for, the care factor, want to grow something, want to build something, and want to be part of a culture, even though, to your point, like, it is always cliche to say, oh, we're all about culture. And it's like, but damn, we really are. And let's build a job around that person, right? And I can tell it's resonating with her because I think me more than you, because you've had, other roles in your career prior to mortgage, and this is all I know. I was fortunate to be under the wings of great people when I first got in this business that were always good. And I was kind of, as you would always make fun of me, you'd be like, you know nobody in this business, right? Ryan's like, what about so-and-so? I'm like, I don't know who you're talking about. He's like, everybody knows that guy. And it's because I just lived in my little glass house and had my head in the sand, and everything was great in my ecosystem, and I didn't have to do anything else. And once we started Bison and started recruiting, and then you start hearing, Bree's a perfect example, right? Bree's been with us over a decade, and after Bree was with us for a while, I remember her saying at one point, like, oh my gosh, you guys are so awesome, like my old boss. And I'm like, what do you mean your old boss? And then she'd tell me the stories, and I'm like, who are these people? Like, what? That's out there? And then I'm thinking, like, oh, it must be just Bree's situation. And then we start recruiting and having these conversations, and it's like, oh my gosh, 90% of people are living in that world and don't even realize this world exists where you can grow, be productive, kick ass, and actually have fun and love the people you work with, and they truly care about you. And I think that's something special.
Jeremy, so what do people get when they come to work with us?
What do people get?
Just like let me just
really cool leadership team around them.
No, I'm just saying, like, so
super hot CFO.
Like, who do we want? When I say who do we want to like, what's the target person? Like, if that target person came to us, like, what would they get with us as opposed to maybe going somewhere else?
I think they get just authenticity that they wouldn't get at other places. And again, I think we, early on, we tried to like silo this, like, oh, a perfect LO is this, and this is all we're going to go after, and we want them to do X, and we want everybody to operate this way. And what you soon see is this business it's a bunch of entrepreneurs who are LOs, right? And they all have strengths and weaknesses and opportunities, and we have to figure out, to Stuart's point, how to build a job around them where we can give them the resources and support that they need to really amplify their own business, their own brand, and just get better. And so I think that's what people get, is they get kind of the hands-on approach that, hey, how can we help you legitimately? Like, we don't have these big policies and procedures, and you have to do the job this way, and you have to load your calls and do all this. I come from that world. It's more, how can we help you? How can we help you grow your business? Because that'll make you successful, it'll make you happy, it'll make us happy, and that's what we thrive on. So I think really it's just kind of the hands-on approach. I think you get a lot of interaction, frankly, not just with us, with everybody, right? And that's goes back to our core values, but when you really kind of look at them, it's like people I truly believe on our team align around those, right? They all have excellence, right? They're all about the herd mentality. They're all these things where if you just kind of stamp everybody on the team and look at those, it's like they do demonstrate them. And so, people who, are, to his point, motivated, want to grow, they have the discipline, right, to take care of their own business, but they just need help and support and truly want that. I mean, we're a great place for them. I think, honestly, we can provide more support than they would ever get.
I think if I can add to that whether you want to admit it or not, personal and professional life are married to each other, right? It's impossible to separate them. If we work, what is the stat? Like 80% of your life you're working or whatever. I think I might have made that up, but I think it's something like that. Yeah. And so, I can think of some specific examples, and I won't name names of, maybe a loan officer that we've hired that has been going through some personal stuff, right? They're a great loan officer. They meet all the check boxes you're asking about. Great producer, knows how to talk to people, can educate, can consult at the level that, we would like, but is going through some major personal stuff. And I think we do a good job authentically, sort of without asking someone to tell us their personal stuff, because our job is not to get in someone's private life. It's their business. But if somebody wants to get into it with us, we will help them as big brothers, so to speak, right? And we've got a few examples of people that have come here and within 6 months, their lives have turned around from a mental standpoint because they worked through that personal thing, because they realize they can talk to us in confidence about these things because, hey, we're some older guys that have been through some stuff. And we may not have all the answers, but they know they can talk to us without feeling judged. That's the biggest thing, because pride, in my experience, gets the best of everybody. They don't want to admit, hey, Ryan, I'm in a bad place. Hey, Ryan, I don't want to get out of bed this morning. And you should tell somebody that, because that person's going to help you. And if they don't, fuck them. You should find the right person, right? So anyway, you get my point. I think that's something very cool that we've done without even trying to do it. And I know for me, if I'm in the rocking chair one day, if I make it that far, those are the things I'm going to remember and feel super proud of all three of us about, is that we can look back and say, dang, dude, remember when we changed that guy's life? We didn't even mean to. And that's pretty cool. Yeah, absolutely. So I think, when Ryan and I set out to systematize what we were doing with our old production team, what we realized is, I went through many times of burnout, as I've shared with a million people, and couldn't take one more loan app, didn't want to do one more phone call, just too much. And starting to have little kids, and you start realizing like you're sacrificing time with them, and if you want to scale and have life balance, which is something I think at Bison Culture we talk a lot about, and we preach about life balance, is you can only achieve that life balance by building a team around you, having a bench of players within that team that is, meaning if Trisha's my only go-to for X and you want to go to Hawaii for a week, but you feel guilty about it because we don't have another person who can take care of X, that doesn't work. Then we're liars about life balance. So we have to build a bench of people that can take care of each other and cover each other when they go. I mean, one of my favorite stories is, when we were on a President's Club trip at VIP years ago, and, one of our big producers, I'm walking around, margarita, whatever, on the beach doing my thing. And I see him sitting there on his laptop on the beach, and his wife's next to him in the lounger. And I go, dude, really? What are you doing? And this was after we had built the team, right? And so Ryan and I could take off and put the out of office on and know everything would get handled. And he's like, well, I got to check on this. And I cut him off. I'm like, you have lost your mind. You don't even, I go, you don't even realize your wife's right there pissed off that you're on your laptop. She's pretending like she's not, but she is. Yeah. And, I think that I saw those moments. I'm like, there's so many people we can help create scale and growth and opportunity without sacrificing time, right? And figuring out a way to do things smarter and more efficiently. And I think for us to specifically answer your question, Trish, is I think it took us a lot of years, and it didn't happen overnight, but we trial and errored, how do we build this team that now, when we started the idea of Bison, was let's take this as a blueprint, and how do we clone this to where we can hire loan officers and say, hey, Ryan, what if we can give you, it's like a menu, right? What if there's 10 things that our team will do for you? You pick which one you want to do, which one of those menu items you want to order, and we'll provide that for you. Not only will we provide it, but it'll be at an excellent level, right? And at first they're like, okay, sure, right? And no one wants to let go, right? That's that's the conundrum of a loan officer, because I've been there. You don't want to let go. You think everybody wants to talk to you because it's your ego. But once you hire a Ryan, for example, that you realize your clients can talk to him and they love him just as much as they love you, then the whole world opens up. And so we already have that team, and we've proven that. We've got people drinking the Kool-Aid, and they love it. And honestly, I can't imagine them leaving that, because in my experience talking to other mortgage companies and seeing what they provide, I was on a call Tuesday on an owner-operator meeting with people all over the country. It was like 10 of us. And I was talking about this. And one guy said, he goes, that's brilliant. He's like, we never thought about that. You know, of course, people say, oh, we have an LOA for you or whatever it is. But I'm going, this is the most valuable assets at Bison are those people. It's not the three of us. It's the people that make the factory run every day, the people that open the door in the morning, shut it at night, get it all working. And it's like, plug into that and let us show you how we can sort of change things. So I think I think we're still learning that, by the way. I think we're still trying to figure out how to improve that, excel that, build that. But
build that is probably the most important part, right?
that?
Trying to figure out how to build it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we don't know
scale it.
The cart before the horse sort of thing. Do we stack this side before we get these guys, or we do this and then we try to bandwidth with these people? But right now we're in this beautiful spot where we're good, right? And I think as we grow, we're going to have different opportunities for different
also
people.
Giving opportunities to employees on the team who want to do different things as well.
Yeah.
Not just LOs, right? Who like want to help with business development efforts or social media help, where we're now able to put more on their plate, expand kind of their career and reignite a little bit of passion there. But yeah, the end goal again is like find ways to help support LOs so that they can focus on the things they love to do and naturally they do best. Because if they can lean into that, their business grows dramatically. And so it's back to this menu of like, we can help you in all these things. Choose as many of them as you want or choose none of them, but just remember we have them. And I do think it is a pretty unique kind of value prop that we can put out there.
And it's baby steps too, right? I think in the beginning we were like, here's our menu. Order the 5-course menu tonight. Right. You'll love it. And we realized like, ooh, that's too scary for people. So now it's like you bring someone on board. They're like, okay, I'll take the jalapeno popper appetizer tonight. Maybe next week I'll try the, and it's like, and it's not bullshit. I mean, I can think of many people who we've put through this process that if they were in here today, they'd be like, that's exactly how it was. And it worked great. And you have to, when you drink from a fire hose, which is the mortgage industry, by the way, that it's very hard and stressful. So if we can figure out a way to manage that chaos and just give you a cup of water every day, by the time you know it, you're asking for 2 fire hoses. I don't even know if that makes any sense, but it sounded great.
I'm lost.
I'm too. By the way, we're starting a fire company.
Yeah.
Fire prevention.
All right.
I'm sorry, Ryan. I know you hate me right now.
No, I don't. I think that was part of that was a good answer.
0 parts.
But I think we're at the point now where we should just kind of wrap up. And so I think this is it a quick question? Okay.
Where do I see Bison? No, I mean, honestly, I don't see any reason that we shouldn't be a $1 billion originator. And so that, is going to take a ton of work and a ton of focus on growth. But just knowing the platform we have, knowing the markets we operate in, knowing the talent around us, the resources, I think it's attainable. And so I just have that figure in my head that how do we get there? How do we keep, moving that direction? So I think of that just in terms of like a big picture, growth target. But outside of that, I mean, again, I don't know.
I think if you're a loan officer out there and you've listened to this podcast or listened to the clips or the shorts or whatever we do, and some of this resonates with you, then it's worth, reaching out to us to have a conversation. And at the end of the day, at least we could do is guide you in the right direction, consult with you, and help you make a decision on what it is you're looking for. But I think we're not for everybody, but we're for most. And, we're here to provide a great life, but, a great opportunity to build wealth for your family. And, I think that's the most important part for all of us, along with the legacy for our kids and families and stuff. So with that being said, great job. Thanks, guys. Love you guys. We're not sponsored by Whistle Pig, but if you want to sponsor, yeah. Great first episode in the new podcast room, and we have a happy hour that we're supposed to be at in 15 minutes. And it keeps going. Guess what? We still work late, and we've got stuff to do. So I'm excited about the growth for sure. And we are in multiple states, which is awesome. And we're meeting with some people from Utah tomorrow, which is exciting because Stuart passed his test. But we're in California. We're in California, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Texas,
Kansas,
Connecticut,
Washington,
Tennessee's in motion.
I mean, we're in a lot of different places and just growing and growing. So we're looking to expand in all those territories, and we're going from there. But that's it. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it, man. Great job. Thanks, Trey. Thanks, Trish.
Oh, sorry. Can I say one last thing?
Sure.
It's okay if you cut it out. I just want to put in the universe on record, whether anyone sees it, I just want you two to know how much I love you guys, seriously. And sitting here rehashing the whole story is super special, and there's no fucking doubt in my mind we did what we were supposed to do, and we're going to fucking crush it, and I just love you guys. So thank you.
Flipping. We're going to flip and crush it.
Sorry, we're going to flip crush.
We love you.
Do you want a hug in your carpet shirt?
No.
It's velour.
Great job, Trey. All right, now put Tupac on. I'm going to freestyle.